Thank you very much for inviting me to talk for 10 minutes on nature and well-being at your Spring into Lewes online festival. So I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint, which I'm going to do now. So you bear with me, I will share my screen and off we go. So again, thank you very much. I'm really excited to have been asked to be part of this. My name is Marina Robb, and I'm lucky to run two organisations, all sharing a similar vision of how we can transform education and health and family life through nature. I've been working in nature for about 30 years, so it certainly helped me in my life, and I'm sure it helps many of you. So what are the areas I'm going to look at? Well, I wanted to just really highlight that connecting to nature looks different to everyone. It depends on your age, your interest, and it's not just about going into nature and, you know, enjoying what some young people might think is, you know, a bit boring, just walking around nature. It can be being really creative, making things with your hands, making fires, using crafts, going on long walks, runs. It can look many different ways, and I think we sometimes forget that because we are nature, and actually just being outdoors really can help us to notice many things. So this leads to the second point, which is about diversity and multiple perspectives is really healthy. I think we're definitely living in a time where actually welcoming so many different ways of looking at things and so many different kinds of people is really, really important. And certainly nature reflects that. It doesn't have or thrive with one kind of plant. It wants multiple kinds of plants, all with the different ages coming together, and that's where we thrive. And I think that's true about humans. And I think certainly when we're young, we think we need to be one kind of way, or one kind of way is better than another kind of way. And actually it's not true. We need all kinds of people in all different, with all different ways of thinking and seeing things. And that's what makes life exciting, certainly to me anyway. And the other key thing here is where we place our attention is extremely valuable. Someone really pointed that out to me, particularly in the last few months, that our minds are constantly distracted. We call it the monkey mind. And actually, we need to learn to place our attention where we want to place it. And nature really helps us to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. So what does the research say? Well, it basically says that time in nature with others, your mates, your friends, and doing something that's fun or meaningful, like something that has a purpose, is actually really beneficial to our mental health. And before we kind of open that up a little bit, what I love is this, that everything in nature invites us to constantly be what we are, because we can spend a whole lifetime trying to be different to who we are and what we are, but really coming to terms with that we're good enough, that we're all right, that we're worthy, and, you know, have value just because of who we are is really important. And I think nature does a lot of that being. It is what it is, and it's okay being what it is, and we can learn from that. So this word mental health, it's certainly become much more common to talk about our mental health, to be much more comfortable with the fact that we're not always okay, and that life does bring its sadness, its anger, its stress, alongside all those wonderful moments of happiness and connection with others and all the things it brings us. So one of the things we have to do to have good mental health is to actually allow ourselves to have a range of feelings and to be okay with that and to accept that in ourselves. It's a funny old picture, this. I think it's just a reminder for me that actually most of our evolution has been in nature. So it kind of makes sense that those millions of years of evolution actually has made it a perfect place to be and to develop and to learn and to grow and to feel well. And it really is only in this last stage of our time that we've actually been spending so much time in front of the computer, as I'm doing now. And it's not that it's a bad thing, it's that when we spend time in front of the computer, often sitting down and not moving, we're actually not doing other things that we could be doing that would be good for our health and our mental health, physical health and mental health. So some of you might be familiar with this idea of the window of tolerance, and all it is really at the moment, all I'm going to speak about is this idea that what we want to do is expand the green zone. So of course we're going to get angry, of course we're going to want to, what they call fight, and that doesn't necessarily mean physical fight, but it means react and feel those strong feelings in ourselves. As at the same time, we might feel that sort of shutting down and removing that kind of what we call in the blue zone. What we want to do is expand that green zone and allow ourselves to have a wider range of feelings, and to be able to sort of pull us back from going into those red and blue zones when we do. And it turns out that nature can really support that as well. So I could speak for hours about the benefits of being outdoors and participating in all sorts of activities outdoors, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, or give you some examples in a minute. But we know it's good for our physical health. We know it's good for our psychological health, for our social well-being as well, and what is called spiritual well-being, that kind of deeper sense of what's important in life to us, that kind of wider sense of what can we be grateful for, even if we don't have everything that we need or want, just to the cup is half full, that kind of approach. But back to nature. So one of the most amazing things about being in the outdoors is that as animals, we are sensory beings. So in some ways, actually increasing that sense of smell, or what we might see, or what we might touch or hear or taste, as well as this whole other senses, which we might call proprioception, which connects to being moving and being in our bodies, and the sense of balance, and actually there are many senses. I think someone has talked about 54 senses that I read about. Nature does it so well because it is full of providing this sensory diversity for us. And actually what the research has shown, and certainly my own experience, is that then if you immerse yourself in a particular smell, which might be flowers or some things that you like, right? Maybe bluebells that hopefully we'll be experiencing in April, in a month's time in the woodlands, without you even thinking or doing anything, you feel better, because not only do you see this blue, you also have this smell. And what that does is that increases that green zone, and it soothes you and it helps you to feel well. So we sometimes talk about this being bottom-up strategies. So when we can't sort it out in our head, well, we let our body sort it out. And that might be going on a run, that might be smelling something really nice, that might be eating something, cooking something on a fire, or touching something that is soothing. Simple ideas, but it's worth considering them because they're actually really effective. And what are we doing here? Well, nature really supports us releasing the hormones that are in our body, which are our happy chemicals. So even without thinking about it, being active and being outdoors already increases those happy chemicals. And because they're moving around our body, that affects our thoughts, and that helps us to see different things that we might not have been able to see when we're sitting in our room, either looking at the computer or just not doing anything different. It's amazing how just doing something different, even if it's going for a walk, can make a difference. And as families, we might not want to go out as a family and go for a walk, but usually if we do it, we come back and we all feel a little bit better. And I mean, for me, I call that my cabin fever. I get cabin fever inside, and once I get out, I come back and I feel a lot better. So what kind of things, when we talk about nature, what are we talking about? Well, it's not, as I said, it's not necessarily going on a walk. It could be using mud to make paint, and just having fun, making some mess. You could be using all sorts of berries in the autumn to make paint, and or you could be making your own kind of colors out of foods to make paint. You can get some clay and make prints, and maybe make some necklaces or pendants, or just have fun making patterns. Don't have to actually end up making anything. And then here we've made what we call these smell pots out of clay, where we make these little pots, and then we put cotton wool inside, and then we put some essential oil in that, and we make something that smells really nice and we can take home with us. And even making a fire is a hugely therapeutic thing to do, just to hang out around a fire and maybe talk, maybe not talk, and maybe eat or maybe not eat. But there's something really soothing about watching the flames. And there's science to show that actually for humans, if we watch things that are moving, it has the effect of relaxing us. And that's the same, you might say, with cloud watching, things like that. So finding things that are moving in a repetitive pattern, but not in a necessarily the same pattern, is very good for our brain waves, like watching the sea and things like that. So you can have a go with clay. This is the theme that I'm bringing, because I reckon as young people, crafting and making things is a really easy way into what I would call nature. So especially around here, where we live around here in Lewes, underneath us is clay. So we can actually dig the clay up and actually use it. So here's some ideas of clay, making some bowls and then painting it, some clay rings. And with Easter being on its way, if you were particularly into making birds, then you could make some clay birds. And in the picture on the bottom right, we've actually put a little piece of wood into the clay so that we can hang it and paint it. And of course, food. Not everybody likes food as much as I do, but I love food, and I love it's the easiest way that I can think of with a family, whether that's in a garden or a woodland, to make food. And that can be from, on the right, we were actually frying dandelions in butter, which is pretty delicious, and then adding in some syrup on the top, or some sugar, and bread, baking bread in a Dutch oven. But you can make pizzas in a frying pan. You can do all kinds of things. So I really hope that you get out and are able to do that. And then more food. Here's some fairy cakes in a tin, in a quality street tin that I've burnt, and then put them in and cook them on the fire, and actually spent quite a bit of time having fun, eating, decorating them. And this is another example with the orange, of putting that in the embers and cooking a cake in an orange, a peeled orange, and using the skin, which is one of many, many ideas to link with food and family and having fun. And I put this in here because you can go a bit more creative. You can actually dye old t-shirts, from using onion skins or strawberries or gorse flowers that are out now, and just experimenting again, doing something like that together could be fun and to explore. And that's, to me, also about nature. It's making the link and having the experience of something that's growing, and then being able to make something with that and appreciating that. So I wanted to mention that if you do want a little bit more help or experience, then this is one of the things we're doing as well. We've created a course for parents and for the young people to up their skills in fire making, or some perhaps more unusual ideas for cooking, and using knives, and as well as loads of crafting ideas. So if you're interested, you can have a look there. Otherwise, as I hope you've seen, there's just so many things you can do yourself, just about getting out into nature and enjoying that space together. So thank you very much for listening to me for this time, and I really hope that you have a nice holiday with your family. And here is my contact details if you want to connect in any way. Thank you. Bye.